Imagine a quiet girl clutching her late mother's necklace, her only tethered to love and memory, only to have it ripped apart by cruel bullies who think they're untouchable. But what happens when those bullies awaken a hidden fire in her? A black belt's fury that lands them in the hospital. This is a story of vengeance, redemption, and unbreakable spirit that will leave you speechless. Hit that subscribe button now to dive into epic tales like this one and join a community that thrives on stories of justice and heart-pounding twists. Don't miss out. Laya Grayson was 16, a wisp of a girl with storm gray eyes and a heart heavy with loss. At Westbridge High, a sprawling gray brick school in a sleepy Ohio town, she was invisible to most, her auburn hair tucked into a messy bun, her wardrobe a rotation of faded hoodies and worn sneakers. But around her neck hung her mother's necklace, a delicate silver chain with a teardrop pendant, its emerald green stone nestled in intricate filigree. It was the last gift from her mother, Emily, given to her in a hospital room 2 years ago, just before cancer stole her away. "This is for strength, Laya," Emily had whispered, her voice frail but fierce. "You're stronger than you know." Laya touched the pendant constantly, a reflex as natural as breathing, its weight grounding her in a world that felt unmoored without her mother. It was tarnished now, the clasp loose, but she wore it every day, a tether to love and memory. Westbridge High was a battlefield of cliques and cruelty, where popularity was a currency Laya didn't possess. She was the quiet girl, always sketching in her notebook during lunch, her head bowed to avoid the predators who roamed the halls. The worst of them was Madison Carver, a senior with a smile like a blade and a cheerleader's untouchable aura. Blonde, poised and vicious, Madison ruled Westbridge with her minions. Jake, a linebacker whose laugh was as brutal as his tackles, and Tara, whose sharp tongue could slice through anyone's defenses. They'd targeted Laya since freshman year, starting with whispers about her thrift store clothes, then escalating to shoves in the hallways and a humiliating incident when Jake dumped her lunch tray on the cafeteria floor, the splatter of mashed potatoes drawing laughs from half the school. Laya endured it silently, her fingers clutching the necklace, swallowing the pain to keep from breaking. It was a crisp October afternoon, the air sharp with the scent of fallen leaves. When the world tilted, Laya sat under an oak tree in the school courtyard, her sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of her mother's face. She was tracing the curve of Emily's smile, lost in the memory of her laugh, when Madison's shadow fell over her. "Drawing your mommy again, Grayson?" Madison's voice dripped with mockery, her blue eyes glinting. Laya's stomach knotted, but she kept her head down, praying they'd move on. They didn't. Jake snatched her sketchbook, flipping through it with a sneer. "This is garbage," he said, tossing it to Tara, who ripped out a page and crumpled it into a ball. Laya's chest tightened, but it was Madison's next move that stopped her heart. "That ugly necklace again," Madison said, stepping closer. "What's the deal with it? Some cheap junk from your dead mom?" Before Laya could react, Madison's hand shot out, yanking the chain. The clasp gave way with a sickening snap, and the pendant flew into the dirt. Laya lunged, but Jake shoved her back, her knees hitting the ground. Tara laughed, stomping on the pendant. The emerald cracked under her heel, the filigree twisting into a mangled ruin. Laya's world shattered with the stone. She scrambled in the dirt, her fingers trembling as she gathered the broken pieces, tears blurring her vision. Madison's laugh cut through her haze. "Oops," she said, her voice syrupy with fake regret. "Maybe now you'll stop being such a pathetic loser." Jake and Tara snickered, and the trio sauntered off, leaving Laya alone with the wreckage of her mother's gift. She didn't go to class that afternoon. She hid in the girls' bathroom, the cold tiles pressing against her back as she clutched the broken necklace and sobbed. The pendant was destroyed. The chain snapped in 3 places. The emerald fractured like her heart. It wasn't just jewelry, it was her mother's promise, her love, her strength. Losing it felt like losing Emily all over again. But something else stirred in Laya, something she'd buried beneath her grief. Rage, not the fleeting kind that fades with tears, but a deep, molten fury that burned hotter with every second she stared at the broken pendant. She'd taken their cruelty for years, stayed quiet, stayed small, because that's what kept her safe. But this was a line crossed, a wound too deep to ignore. Laya wasn't just the quiet girl with sad eyes. She was a black belt in Taekwondo, trained since she was 6 by her Uncle Ray, a former Marine who ran a dojo in the next town over. Her father, a long-haul trucker, was gone for weeks at a time. After Emily's death, Ray had become Laya's anchor. He taught her discipline, focus, how to channel pain into power. She'd stopped competing after her mother's diagnosis, too broken to step onto the mat, but the skills were still there, etched into her muscles, waiting. She'd never used them outside the dojo, never wanted to, until now. Laya didn't tell anyone what she was planning, not her best friend Sarah, who'd been urging her to fight back for years, and not Ray, who'd always said fighting was a last resort. This was her battle, and she'd fight it alone. She knotted the broken chain and wore it like a scar, a reminder of what they'd taken. The next day, she walked into Westbridge with a different energy. Madison noticed immediately, her eyes narrowing in the hallway. "Still wearing that trash?" she taunted, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Laya didn't flinch. She met Madison's gaze, her eyes steady, unflinching. "You'll regret that," she said quietly, her voice carrying a weight that made Madison pause, a flicker of unease crossing her perfect face. For the first time, Laya saw it fear. It was small, but it was there, and it fueled her. Laya spent the next week watching them, studying their patterns like a strategist. Madison's cheer practices ran late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Jake lingered in the weight room after school. Tara snuck behind the gym to vape between classes. Laya wasn't reckless. She knew she couldn't take them all at once, and she didn't want a public brawl. She wanted justice precise and undeniable. She also knew the school wouldn't help. Principal Harrow was notorious for protecting the popular kids, especially athletes like Jake and cheerleaders like Madison. Laya had reported them once after the lunch tray incident and got nothing but a lecture about conflict resolution. So she planned, and she waited, her anger sharpening her focus. Opportunity came during the school's annual pep rally, a chaotic event where the gym thrummed with noise and ego. Madison, Jake, and Tara were in their element, basking in the spotlight. Laya slipped out early, knowing they'd head to the parking lot afterward for their usual post-rally hangout, a ritual of laughter and cruelty. She waited behind a row of cars, her pulse steady, her body loose but ready. She'd chosen her ground carefully, no cameras, no witnesses, just her and them. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the asphalt when Madison's voice cut through the air. "What's this, Grayson? Stalking us now?" she called, strutting toward a car with Jake and Tara flanking her. Laya stepped into the open, the broken necklace glinting in the fading light. "You broke something that mattered to me," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. "I want an apology." Jake laughed, stepping closer, his bulk meant to intimidate. "You're going to cry about that stupid necklace again? Get over it." Tara chimed in. "Yeah, go back to your little drawings, weirdo." Laya's eyes didn't waver. "Last chance." Madison tossed her hair, her smile venomous. "Or what? You're going to cry us to death?" Laya moved faster than they could process. Years of training snapped into place, her body a blur of precision. She targeted Jake first, the biggest threat. A roundhouse kick to his knee sent him buckling, and as he stumbled, she drove an elbow into his solar plexus, knocking the wind out of him. He hit the pavement, gasping. Tara screamed, lunging at Laya, but Laya sidestepped, grabbing Tara's arm and twisting it into a joint lock. Tara dropped to her knees, whimpering. Madison froze, her bravado crumbling. Laya stepped toward her, and Madison scrambled back, tripping over her own feet. "You don't touch me," Laya said, her voice like steel. "And you don't touch what's mine." She didn't strike Madison. The fear in her eyes was enough. Jake and Tara were bruised, humiliated, and according to the whispers that spread like wildfire, sent to the hospital for observation. Laya hadn't broken bones, but she'd hit hard enough to make a point. By Monday, Westbridge was electric with gossip. Some called Laya a hero, others a vigilante. Madison tried to spin it, claiming Laya had attacked them, unprovoked, but too many kids had seen the bullying, the necklace, the cruelty. The tide turned. Students who'd once laughed at Madison's taunts now whispered about Laya's strength, her quiet fury. But Laya wasn't celebrating. She'd won, but it felt hollow. The principal called her in, threatening suspension until Uncle Ray stepped in, revealing he'd recorded Laya's account of the bullying months ago as a precaution against the school's inaction. Harrow backed down. Madison's clique faced consequences. Community service, counseling, and for Jake, a benching from the football team that cost him his college scout visits. But the story twisted in ways Laya never expected. A week later, cleaning out her mother's old jewelry box, hoping to salvage the necklace, Laya found a letter tucked beneath the velvet lining. It was in Emily's handwriting, dated days before her death. "Laya, my brave girl, the necklace isn't your strength. It's a reminder of the strength you already have. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Fight for yourself always." Laya's throat tightened, tears spilling as she realized her mother had known she'd need to find her fire. But there was more. The letter hinted at Emily's own past, a side Laya never knew. "I was a fighter too," Emily wrote. "Not just in spirit, but on the mat. Ask Ray about the dojo days." Stunned, Laya confronted her uncle, who revealed Emily had been a taekwondo prodigy in her youth, a black belt who'd walked away from it to raise her daughter. The necklace wasn't just a gift. It was a symbol of Emily's own strength, passed down. This revelation reshaped Laya. She returned to the dojo, her kicks sharper, her focus unbreakable. She wasn't just fighting for herself now, she was carrying her mother's legacy. The ripples of her actions spread. Sarah admitted she'd been the one who tipped off other students about Madison's bullying, turning the school's opinion against the clique. A quieter twist came from Tara, who approached Laya one day, eyes downcast, and apologized. She'd been caught in Madison's orbit, too scared to break free. Laya didn't trust her at first, but Tara's actions distancing herself from Madison, volunteering to help younger kids, suggested she meant it. Jake doubled down, his anger festering. Madison, humiliated, plotted revenge. The story's climax came at a regional taekwondo tournament where Laya competed for the first time in years. Jake's cousin, a rival fighter from another dojo, targeted Laya in the ring, taunting her about the necklace. The fight was brutal, Laya's focus tested by his jabs and her own doubts. But as she dodged a high kick, she saw Uncle Ray in the crowd, holding the repaired necklace, its emerald gleaming. She remembered her mother's words, "Fight for yourself." Laya countered with a spinning heel kick, winning the match and the crowd's respect. Back at school, Madison's final attempt at revenge, a cruel social media campaign, backfired when Tara exposed her, posting screenshots of Madison's private messages mocking other students. Madison left Westbridge, her reputation in tatters. Laya's journey didn't end there. She grew into a quiet legend, not just at school, but in the dojo, where she mentored younger fighters. The necklace, now reset and reinforced, hung around her neck, a symbol of her mother's love and her own resilience. She faced new challenges, a rival dojo member who pushed her limits, a betrayal by a teammate who leaked her strategies, the weight of her father's absence. But each hurdle made her stronger. Westbridge changed too. The culture shifted as kids like Laya stood taller, inspired by the girl who fought back. Her mother's letter stayed with her, tucked into the jewelry box, a reminder that strength wasn't just in her fists, but in her heart.